To assist us in crafting this plan, we have hired Greg Pronovitz, strategic planning consultant extraordinaire. He will be facilitating tonight's discussion. Please be aware that Waycam is videotaping the event for viewing by those unable to attend, and we will make that publicly available. So thank you all for making the time to come out tonight to share your thoughts, hopes, and dreams for your local public library. And now I hand the meeting over to Greg.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your evening at the library, contributing to this really important process. We have a really good crowd here, so that means we have to move quickly because we want to hear from all of you. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the planning process that the library is going through. It started out with a community survey, and I've done a lot of planning with a lot of libraries, and getting 600 community members to respond to a survey in a community this size is a really good response, so I was really happy with that. We met with the trustees to hear their ideas on the library's present and future, as we're going to discuss today. We're going to be meeting today with you to talk about your vision for the future of Wayland. How do you say Wayland? Wayland, okay. We're going to talk about the library's present strengths and your vision for the future of the library. After this meeting, I'll be meeting with all of the staff from the library to talk about these same topics and begin to flesh out some goals and activities that the library will focus on over the next 5 years. Then we'll be working with a group, strategic planning working group. Who here is on the strategic planning working group? Thank you for working on that group. But they'll be also reviewing the plan and providing input to it before it gets presented to the trustees for their comments. And then the plan will be approved by the trustees and then sent to the state agency, the Board of Library Commissioners, for approval. So tonight, as facilitator, my job is to encourage you to share your thoughts about the future of the community, and then to gather your impression about what the current strengths of the library are. And then we'll talk about what you think the future of the library should look like. Your community's gone through a major discussion about the library, and I think there are various camps out there about what the future might look like in different people's opinions. So we'll be hearing from various groups and individuals. And so tonight we're going to be brainstorming. How many of you have brainstormed before with a group like this? What were tell me a brainstorm that you thought was good. Say it loud, please.
Write down your comments, the comments.
We'll write down everyone's comments. What's another line for brainstorming?
No criticism of the previous comments.
No criticism of previous comments. Another guideline. Keep it short. Another guideline. Yes?
Try to imagine what you envision in 5 years.
Try to imagine what your community and library will look like in 5 years. And another guideline for you is speak loudly and clearly, because I have to repeat everything into the microphone and my hearing isn't very good. So another guideline. Okay, we're out of guidelines. One guideline that I have is quantity is good. Okay, so what I'd like to do to start this off, we're going to spend hopefully up till about 8 o'clock talking about community vision. So you need a seat, come on up here. There's seats up in the front row. We'll be talking about community vision, and I'm going to be writing everything down as fast as I can and repeating what you say to the cable TV audience. And what I'd like to do to encourage everyone to share is to start with one person, and then we're just going to go around the room and ask everybody to make a contribution, and passing is okay. Who wants to go first? Who has an idea about your vision for Wayland in 5 years? What would you like to see? What has changed? What does it look like? The woman in the pinkish color raised her hand first. Yes. Just speak loudly.
What I see is more use of the other facilities in Wayland as opposed to building a new library.
Okay.
I foresee our libraries being able to use after library. We have schools that are not used in the evening. Libraries. We have schools with good libraries. First of all, I appreciate the opportunity to say what I think. I really do. But I think that a library is a place where you have a resource to come to, resources available to you, and we have plenty of those. But it's not a community center. It is a library. And so I would like to see it kept as a library. That's my vision.
The vision for the community is the library is a library with resources. Is that a good way to say it? Next, let's go clockwise from there. Aida, pass. Yes.
My comment would run counter to the previous comment. I would like to see expanded programming and opportunities to do things at the library. I think libraries can be a wonderful community center and a great gathering place for young parents, for all ages. So I would envision a different building in Wayland and a new building that offers expanded opportunities.
Okay. Now, somebody said one of the guidelines is no critiquing, but since I'm the facilitator, I wanted to point out that we have 3 things to talk about today: your vision for Wayland, the present library strengths, and then your vision for the future of the library. We started with the future of the library, so I'm going to ask the next person, who is sitting behind the last commenter. I'll be with you in 1 second. About the future of Wayland, not the library itself. Sir, do you have an idea about the future of Wayland?
Sure. First of all, I love the library. I'm here a couple times a week. It's homey. The people are great. But it's an antiquated facility, and I embrace the idea of the library as a community center. I don't know within the confines of the physical structure whether that can happen or not, but I would love to see that. 9 out of 10 times, if I want a book, it's not available. We just don't have the space, and the staff is more than gracious in getting it from other libraries, but the time has come to change the library in some way, make it more modern, and I do love the idea of it as a community center.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the next person to talk about your vision for Wayland. I'm just going to put a check mark next to this one. And we're going clockwise around the room so everybody can speak. Would you like to say something?
I pass.
Would you like to say something?
I think I'm going to have to pass as well.
That's fine. Here's someone who's not going to pass.
My vision for Wayland is that the high taxes will change Wayland considerably and the residents that live there.
Could you pass it to the next person?
So my vision for Wayland is actually a little different. If I look at Wayland now, I see a whole bunch of fiefdoms and people fighting for territory to do things. And my vision for Wayland is a more constructive dialogue with different organizations in figuring out how the resources of Wayland can best be shared amongst organizations for different purposes. And I don't want to make any statement about what that would mean, because I think that would be up to the people. But I think part of the reason Wayland's taxes are so high is because everybody kind of wants to roll their own, and the town really can't afford that.
Pass it back to the woman behind you if she would like to say something.
Sure, thank you. My vision for Wayland is that it's a welcoming community and a community that values the people who are here and the people who are wanting to be here, and all ages and genders, and a welcoming place. I think a library can have a significant role in that community, and I do like the idea of a library as community center. I think of the origins of libraries and how they've always been a place that have been very welcoming, and people can access resources and information and come together. In terms of the library's strengths, I've been nothing but impressed. Oh, we're getting to strengths later.
Thank you. It's okay. We need to give everybody a chance to talk. Would you like to say something, sir?
Sure. My vision for Wayland involves some strategic planning so that we have something done ahead of time that makes sense for the entire town and not just for some of the fiefdoms that have been referred to. Thank you.
My vision of Wayland, I think I'll pass, but thank you anyway.
My vision for Wayland is a community where all the organs of local government and all the various boards and committees are in a constant state of communication, not just generally, although that would be a good thing on its own, but also in terms of arranging for the sharing of various community resources for the benefit of each community organization, board, etc.
I don't have a whole lot. My vision of Wayland has changed over the years. When I moved here, I had a child in school, so I was focused on the schools. Now I am a senior citizen, and Wayland is a beautiful town. I'm not happy with the tax situation. I'd like to see the focus on the town be more inclusive of everybody. We seem to be focusing more on the kids, and it might drive out the older people that can't afford to live here. Other than that, I'd like to see people get along and work on a solution. Thank you.
Repeat what you said about the focus on kids.
When I moved here, I had a child in school, and I think that was one of the reasons I moved here. And I think Wayland is still very focused on schools and young families, and the tax structure is supporting those schools. And a lot of the older people that have been in Wayland for a long time, that's not their focus anymore. And, it's hurting us. Thank you.
My vision for Wayland is not unlike the previous speaker. I was also here with children in the school system, and that's why I came to Wayland. And when we had some of the classmates of my children graduated from high school, when their last child graduated, literally the next week they had their house on the market so they could find a place with lower taxes. But for me personally, my vision, I would like to stay in this town for the duration. And I think we have a lot of friends. I'm 75 and I'm planning to be here till I'm 95. But many of our friends feel the same way about this town. It's beautiful. We'd like to have it retain its rural character, and we would like to have a place where seniors can gather, and that's not what we have now. And so the vision that many of you know I have already been trying to work on for 9 years now is to create a community center where seniors and children and adults in between could go for various activities, social, recreational, and basically just have a home away from home where they are not shut-ins in their house, which is what's happening in Wayland today. Seniors, especially those who have lost the license to drive, are shut-ins in their own homes in this wealthy community, and it's absolutely not right. And the fact is that over 25% of the population is over 60. And so we have, and that's increasing. It's going up to 30%. So part of the vision that I see that's relevant to this discussion tonight is not in any way to impede plans to improve the library, but also to make it in concert with other activities that would encourage seniors to stay in town and to keep that community together, because I think it's a vibrant community that should stay.
So if I say create a future in concert with multiple organizations, yes, please, what's your vision for Wayland in 5 years?
Perhaps even longer, I hope. My thought for Wayland as a vision is that it is inclusive, it has diversity, and diversity both in different types of people, but that we welcome, but also seniors as well as children. I see a community center as a fabulous idea, and I see a community center as one that is different from a library. Just to be clear, a library to me is a place of scholarship, of resources, and having people doing yoga or Zumba or cooking. That seems to be a community center where you can be noisy and have all kinds of cooking smells and what have you, whereas a library is pristine and quiet, and good for people to get together to do quiet things. So my vision for Wayland is we would have a community center for the diverse population that we do have and serve all people, and not fiefdoms, as was mentioned before. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Your vision.
I agree with the previous speaker.
She was short. Thank you. How about your vision?
Maintaining the rural integrity of our community, but also expanding our business base, which would help tremendously with our taxes.
Okay. Looking at the demographics in Wayland, the population is pretty stable. It'll slowly increase over the years, but we're pretty well built out. So the population will be about the same. The proportion of school-age children is steadily decreasing, and that's going to have an effect on what goes on in the town. And as mentioned, the population is aging. The proportion of seniors is going to grow. I've been cut off.
Your vision is that the demographics will continue as they are.
Fewer people in the schools, more people. I hate the word senior citizens, but we need to accommodate that. I think jumping ahead, a community center is a very good idea, and a separate library that focuses on library missions is what we need.
I see Wayland as being part of the Middlesex County network. We already have that. I think the library is very much aware of that. It is a way to work with our neighbors and with cars. Many people are just as close to Sudbury or to Lincoln or other towns as they are to their things in town, and therefore I see Wayland as being more and more integrated and using these other resources. And we complement that by saying, if we don't have the space, we'll have the talent. And therefore we emphasize, for example, the library having a specialty perhaps that other libraries don't have. All part of the idea of we're part of a region and not just a town. And I think that will help us to focus on reducing taxes by not duplicating efforts.
I'd like to look backward a little bit. Wayland has been here a long time. It's a historic community. It's pleasant to just be in. We have two community centers, and both of them are walkable. I would like to see library services available in both of those communities.
What were they? The two?
Oh, well, I was speaking of the Cochituate Center. Yeah, it's a long town, and there are two real centers to it. And centers of commerce and centers of history.
I pass.
Sorry about the delay. Who has the microphone?
I do now.
We'll get back to you in a second.
I'd like to see Wayland as a town that continues to do its best to conserve the treasures that it has. The environmental treasures that make it unique, and buildings like this that function remarkably well as a library. I'm here many times a week, and I can tell you the library here is excellent as it is. The population is getting older. If you look at the 7 cities around us, we have the oldest average age citizens of all those 7 towns. So we do not need more space. We do need more attention to some of the electronic facilities, and we could stand some expanded hours, but space is not the issue. So I'd like to see Wayland conserve this building as a library and conserve the environment.
One of the advantages of not going first is that you get to steal ideas from other people. So I'm going to do a little bit of that.
That's allowed.
I heard, yes, thank you. I heard diversity, which I think is really important. We need to make this community a little more diverse than it is. I heard being maybe a little bit more friendly to business, which I feel very strongly about. And I'm going to sort of add and build on what other people said about the fiscal situation in the town and taxes. Whatever we do, and I don't think we should constrain ourselves, but whatever we do, we need to do as fiscally efficiently as possible. And I think you can combine those all together. It's a lofty goal, but after all, isn't that what a vision is?
Yes, thank you.
Well, the problem with not going for I moved to Wayland because I like the family homes. I like the space between the houses. It's not crowded. I don't have large apartment buildings. So what I'd like to see in the future is to continue on this while the town progresses. I'm not against moving ahead. So some of the things else I liked is even when before and activities for adults who were not seniors to happen in town. Everything seems to revolve around the kids. Now, the reason I can say this is because my children didn't live long enough to be in the school system, but I've supported it because I wanted good citizens out of the children that did live in town. And I'm small industry with the tax base. That's the biggest problem with Wayland is they've lost all their industry. Communication, definite plus. And I'm trying, oh, there we go. And not just open communication in the town leaders, but with everyone on the town. The density is in South Wayland or Cochituate, so we have to be very careful that lines aren't drawn and people are on different sides just because of where they live. And I'd like to see an improvement on the roads. I mean, traffic is getting to be a real burden through Wayland, and a lot of people are driving through Wayland to get to other destinations. It's too bad that we cannot be a destination.
Pass.
Thank you.
Hey, just more outlets and opportunities for community building, space for families with young children would be great. Yeah, in whatever shape or form that comes in.
I'd like to see Wayland have a long-term plan so that we do not have the kind of town meetings where everyone shows up and it takes 3 or 4 times to pass something through. I don't want to see people fighting. I don't want to see people calling each other names. So I'd like to see that we had an actual stacked up, here are our capital projects, here how they're going through, and this is the amount of money we have. You don't get to spend more than what we have. You can only raise taxes so much. And so the way I look at just the vision for Wayland is that we have to pick one thing and build it well. And at this point, I don't think we're there. And I hear just everyone saying library, community center. If we can't even acknowledge that we have no more land left to build on, and maybe we should be buying some so that we can actually play the shuffle game and get one thing nailed down so that we do that. And once we do that, other things can fall into place. Like I said, I'm looking more like a 20-year plan, and I want money attached to it. Excuse me, a budget attached to it.
Well, thank you. Let this. Sir, you came in a little late. We're talking about our visions for Wayland for 5 years from now. If you'd like to say something now, we'll welcome it, or we'll go around, or we'll be asking again. Would you like to say something?
Not yet.
Okay, we'll get you later.
Not prepared, sir.
Passing's loud.
Okay. This is not the end of my thoughts, but something that people have not mentioned. I want Wayland to be a welcoming town for people with low income. You know, we're staying here because it's hard to move out. And there's really no other friendly place for us anyway. The end.
Thank you.
Are we just going around?
We're just going around to talk about your vision for the future of Wayland over 5 years.
Mm-hmm. All right, so my name's Pete Curran, so apologize for if I'm repeating any of this, but I actually work at the middle school, so I think in that lens, I feel like having a space that is vibrant and welcoming to our teens, I think would be a really exciting piece to add to our community. I feel like right now we don't really have a place for kids to gather, to congregate, to build their own community. And I would echo the welcoming community piece that you mentioned a second ago.
Thank you. Why don't you pass it back there? Thank you. We're just kind of going around, giving everybody a chance.
I really would like to echo, I can't remember your name, the woman in the green, Carol. Yeah, I mean, I think strategic planning, I think there are a lot of institutions that have that really have a role for community building, including the library, the senior center, the schools, etc. And having them able to work in concert, I think, obviously, is the best outcome. And the dearth of buildable land here is really a problem. But I think a really long-range plan where that the whole town can get behind is probably key for any, kind of future construction and for many other things too, budgeting, et cetera.
Okay. I love Wayland, and I think it should, if it's going to change very slowly, and we should think about long-term planning and marvel at what we have. I think this is a great place.
I'm just going to preface this by saying I love this building. I really do. Okay. As far as the taxes are concerned, business isn't the answer. It's even if we still had Raytheon and Dow, for instance, it would be a very small percentage of the total budget every year. And they're not going to happen. There is no place for them to build. And even if there was, the way things are now in Wayland, no way would they actually be allowed in this town. Everybody in that neighborhood would go berserk. So it's not going to happen. I had a retail business in this town for 30 years. And I'll tell you, 2 decades from now, I probably won't be around. There aren't going to be any retail stores, period. They'll be gone. They're dying very quickly. Everybody buys online. I had a business. People could. So, it was safe, but very few businesses. I mean, Sears is going to be gone totally, period, as an example. Nothing is going to survive except Amazon and all of those. Everything that we buy 20 years from now is going to be bought online, period. So that's not the answer for the tax problem in Wayland. The problem in Wayland is that we have an appetite for every freaking thing, and we spend our money on it. We're out of control in Wayland, period. Money is spent like water. That's what the problem is. So it's not going to be it's not going to be businesses that are going to save Wayland and drive the taxes down. People have got to start making really good choices. Where the money should be spent in Wayland, period. It's the only way. Moved here in 1980. This place has changed dramatically. There was no traffic. You could come down 126, 27, come across 20, and there was no traffic any time of day, period. We've been overbuilt, and the towns around us have been overbuilt, and all those people have to cut through Wayland to get to Boston or something like that. So it's a real dramatic change. The problem is when I moved here, or my wife and I moved here in 1980, we didn't move for the schools. We didn't have kids until 4 years later. But that's the primary thing people have been moving to Wayland for, is the school system. Unfortunately, all of the people we knew from our children going to school long ago left Wayland. There are very, very few. I mean, we're talking maybe 5% of our 3 children's, families that they went to school with are still around in Wayland, and it's difficult. I mean, every quarter we put out a lot of freaking money for taxes, and we keep staying. But how long can people do that? So we got a serious problem.
What would you like to see in 5 years different? You already said people need to make good choices about spending. Is there something else I should add?
Not really. I mean, I think Wayland is pretty damn good the way it is. We've been lucky, and that's why, my wife and I want to stay in Wayland. We really like Wayland. The services are excellent. I think the library is outstanding. And it's just taxes for older people are very difficult.
Well, thank you. Sir,
Well,
your vision for Wayland over the next 5 years, what would you like to see?
well, I guess the question is what I'd like to see and what I think we're going to see.
So what would you like to see? That's the question.
Yeah. I'm sorry. As long as Wayland continues to have the sole directive of for our kids, I cannot see a future for Wayland.
Thank you. What would you like to see in Wayland in 5 years?
Well, I moved here in 1983, and I hope to be here in 5 years from now. I like Wayland. I don't have any children in the schools, and I have never had any children in the schools, but I still like living here. But I also agree with most of the comments that were stated about the strategic planning and that we are at a crossroads. I think the town is at a crossroad where we do need to start looking at taking with those items that we'd like to putting them in an or some kind of order, and then working through that list.
Prioritize projects. That's an okay way to put it. Sir.
Being more on, Wayland has so many great things.
It's working. Get really close to it, okay?
So there's lots of amazing things in Wayland. We have an amazing library system. We have an amazing council on aging. And the problem is that other communities don't even know what we have here and don't appreciate what we have here. You hear about all these other communities in Weston and Wellesley and Concord and Lexington and Needham, and people just do not understand what we have here in Wayland. And we have amazing programs and some decent facilities. We now have a great high school and great educational buildings, but we don't have the facilities for a council on aging. We don't have the facilities for a library. Even though we have the amazing services, we don't have the facilities for that. So we do need to start planning now, and eventually, I'm hoping in 5 years, we'll have the facilities that deserve the services that we actually have here, and that we will get on the map, and people will come to Wayland. We have an amazing history in Wayland. Nobody knows about the history that we have in Wayland, in our riverfront. You hear of other, in Concord. Wayland has all this history, and just nobody knows about it outside of Wayland. They know about our great education system, and they know about all of our great trails, but they don't know about all the other wonderful things that we do. So,
thank you very much. What would you like to see?
Well, assuming we have the money, I would love to see more technology for communications between groups and organizations, and town meeting from your own living room. As I'm getting older, my husband was disabled before he passed away, and for him to attend different things was very difficult. And if there had been the technology, and if it was easy to use, so that seniors who don't have all the skills that some of the younger kids have, could easily tap into meetings and from their own homes, as opposed to having to go out in the middle of the winter.
My vision for Wayland is to have a strengthened sense of community, and to further strengthen, I think a town goal is lifelong learning. Lifelong learning for our young people who are starting out, and our teens, our young adults, older adults, and our senior citizens.
I would like to see the town and the community, including the library, working toward being more environmentally sustainable.
I would hope that in 5 years, the Wayland Town Center would be a more vibrant part of our community.
Lots of good ideas. I probably don't have any new ones. I just would say that we did spend a lot of time on a strategic plan for the town, a capital improvement plan, if you will, and it's sitting on a shelf. It's called the RAP plan. Maybe people read it. Oh, okay. Maybe there's some ideas in there about their. No, right, yeah. No, it was Wayland Real Asset Planning Committee, but there is an analysis of all of the land that is owned by the town, and there are a few parcels left that are over 20 acres that could take new construction. So when people say we have to buy land, maybe not. Maybe we have to look at what we have, which is all laid out in that plan. Thank you.
I would hope that in 5 years, Wayland stays as beautiful as it is, but doesn't let that beauty give us a sense of complacency that we don't move forward with some of these ideas. I think that in 5 years, we need to have brought some of them to fruition. I would hope we retain our semi-rural character, by which I mean no 4-story buildings. I'd like to see us stay, kind of with this kind of architectural styles that we have right now and not turn into giant housing.
First, I have to thank you for putting my wife first in this evening's commentary. She did. She and I have lived in Wayland for 55 years now, and in my 80s, I am truly aging in Wayland. And we plan to stay here. We love this community. We've put 5 children through the schools here. And we have no plans, but I have fears for the future. I think that we have, over the past few years, seen a lack of civility growing in this town. And I think it was exemplified, sadly, by the last town meeting. We have groups that have their own interests. This has been mentioned previously. If we're going to be successful moving forward, we need to be a community. The key is community, and we're not going to have a future if we cannot bring the parties together so the people can understand each other's needs and that we can move forward together as a community. Thank you.
Yes. I have.
Okay.
I want to thank the room for supporting the schools because I realize looking at all of you that you are the tax base. So thank you for that. And Carol, I think you should run for office. And for the library, I think if we're not going to have a new building, since we're not, we voted it down. If I would like to see the library in maybe another place, maybe in the town center, taking up some space, since this is the only big room at the library, I would like to see the programs maybe happening in some other space. Unless we can get that community center built, in which case maybe we could just link the library to the community center and do programs that way, and we could see the overlap among the older people and the younger people by making use of the community center in that way.
So, there's one other person who wasn't here. We're talking about, well, you were standing in the back when we started, right?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I snuck in. Yeah.
Oh, you were here, okay.
And there are a few over there too.
Okay. But did you speak already?
No, not yet.
What's your vision for
Oh,
Wayland
okay.
in
For in
5
5 years. In 5 years, I would love to see a much more walkable Wayland with many more sidewalks in the town center that don't dead end. I would love to be able to walk from the post office to the library without crawling through the post office's flower garden, which I have to do. It's impossible to push a stroller around through the center of town. I would love to be able to drive to things at town center, things worth visiting at town center, park my car, and be able to spend the day around like a vibrant town center. I'd love it if the library could go into the former Whole Foods Plaza that is just a mess of asphalt, completely unused, huge, ready for, a tenant. And that's it. As a young mother, I find it really, really impossible to do anything on foot here in this town. And especially in this building, it's a real, but when he was 0 to 3, I almost never visited this library because the elevator was broken or the parking was too hard. So it's very hard for that population, I think.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Who didn't have a chance? What's your vision for Wayland?
My vision is that there is real leadership at the top, and that leadership creates a sense of community, that we have a long-range plan. As mentioned before, there is a document, the RAP report, which has been treated as a shelf document that explains how you can afford and plan to afford all of the things that people seem to want. And I think it's important that people remain in Wayland after their children graduate from high school. We have to do something that makes people want to stay here and be able to afford to stay here. So the appetite for new, better, have to have, I think has to somehow be curbed a little bit, because what happens is people push up our taxes, get their children through the school system, and then leave. And that leaves the rest of us holding the bag. And that's not fair. And then the older people eventually move out because they can't afford it. And then we don't have the same community that we've always had. It's too transient. Thank you.
Hi. Hi. I just wanted to add also an environmental component as we look toward the future. I'd love to see us emphasize our shared resources and look especially towards shared spaces. I know a lot of people want a community center, and a library can also serve as a community center. I think there could be a lot of cross-pollination if we could do some kind of a combined project. I would love to see that. But I also would like to see our mutual interests in things like town meeting be changed so that everyone can participate equally. I think some of the resentments come because the format of our whole town government makes it very difficult for some people to participate, and then you get a lot of resentments from both directions. And I think we need to find some solution where everyone can access the meeting, whether they are able to be on site or not, and to find maybe different ways of voting. I think that would go a long way toward giving us a more civil community, because we definitely need to emphasize that we're all in this together and we all share this town. So hopefully that'll improve.
Anyone else?
I'll do it now. I'm ready. A lot of folks have talked about a long-term plan. We actually have one. It's here at the library. Now, it is old, and I know they're working on updating it, but a lot of good information in there for you. I moved 400 yards down the road here because of the library, so we really enjoy it. So my vision is in 5 years I can still walk here.
And thanks for the walkway to the library. Thank you, sir. Did everyone get a chance to speak? Did anyone who passed want to jump in now and say something that hasn't been said? Okay. Well, I'm going to open it up for 5 minutes for one-sentence additions of new things to the list. Does anybody have anything new they'd like to add to the list in one sentence?
Get the rest of the community to chime in, because this group does not represent the community.
Thank you. Mentioned that we did have 600 responses to the community survey, so we got a lot of input. Another quick input. We've got a couple of minutes. Anything to add? Yes, sir.
Very close to the library, somewhere we parked tonight, there is a freight house. It's large. The town has invested money in it. I would like to see it put to a good purpose. The library's original site, Collins Market, is for sale. I would like to see this town claim that and put it to a good purpose.
What is the name of that site?
Collins Market. It was the site of the original library collection.
Thank you. Last comment. Who wants to have the last word? Yes.
I would like people to understand what town meeting means. A lot of people feel that, oh, I don't want to listen to the other person go on and on. But that is what a town meeting is for people to come with open minds and to listen to both sides or all sides, if there's more than one, on opinions. And so I'd like people to understand what a town meeting is for and why it has lasted over 300 years in Wayland. Only because people let it.
Thank you very much. So that's part one of tonight's exercises for library strategic planning. We've got 5 pages of notes about what people think about the community. Yes, sir.
What is the purpose of part one? We're here to talk about the library and the limited amount of
The question is, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah. My question is, what is the purpose of part one that we've just been through and spent an hour on? We've been here we all gathered to talk about the library, and while it's interesting to hear what people have to say about the community, my question would be, aren't we here to talk about the library?
Yes, we are here to talk about the library, and it's really important that when a library does planning, that it does that planning in the context of the community where it is. The library planning process involves the library trustees, the library staff, library planning committee, 600 community members who responded to the survey. It looks like we have about 40 or 50 people here who are here to talk about the library, But the library doesn't stand alone. The library is part of the community. It's an integral part of the community, and we need to hear what people are thinking about the community to make the library fit into it. So now we're going to start talking about the library directly. So what I'd like to ask you to talk about now are the strengths of the library that you see now. What are the kinds of things that the library is doing well? What that we can build on to make the library better in the future? And after this exercise, we're going to take about hopefully 20 or 25 minutes to pass the microphone around very quickly so everybody has a chance to comment. We're going to talk about the future of the library. And when we talk about the future of the library, we're talking about what kinds of great opportunities does the library have, perhaps to do something differently, perhaps to do something new, perhaps to stop doing something that it's already doing. Those are opportunities. And we'll also be talking about your vision for the future of the library. Some of those snuck into your vision for the future of the community. But we're going to talk about what you'd like to see in the library, what might change, what might stay the same, what might evolve. So that's part 2 and 3 of today's discussion. So for those, does that make sense to everyone? Any questions about what we're going to do next? Talking about library strengths. Who has a strength? I want to give somebody new the microphone to start with this time, if that's okay.
The staff of the library is its greatest strength, all of it, but right at the stage right now, the children's staff has been exceptional.
So let's pass the microphone the other way this for a change of pace.
Well, I was going to say first and foremost, the staff in an unbelievably difficult situation. There is no space. There's a lot that goes on in the library behind the scenes, and they are working miracles behind the scenes, getting the programs and the materials out to you, the public. Okay, I have to commit, I'm a librarian. Not in Wayland, but I have worked in many libraries, and libraries have changed. If you think libraries are quiet little spots where you go and you do your homework or you research something, you're terribly wrong. It's full of activity and noise and things that people want to do. Talk, chat, communicate, whether it's digitally or verbally. But the second thing is there are quiet spots for those that do want to pursue scholarly places. But you can't have all that in a building that is too small. I love this building too. I worked as a page in this building. I love this building. But this building would be better suited for so many other activities than a library.
Thank you.
Well, I must admit, I make very limited use of this building at this point. So the best I can offer, that could change. The best I can offer is as an asset, since I'm limited really in my activity to taking out books, taking out audiobooks, and so on, is the Minuteman Library Network. That's really the strongest aspect to me. In terms of the physical building, I love it the way it is.
Thanks to the laws of the state of Massachusetts. You passed? Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Thanks to the laws of the state of Massachusetts, this is an independent library run by a board of trustees who elects or who selects the library staff. And I believe it should remain that way, and it should not be beholden to the rest of town government.
I was going to say
strength is the fact part of the Minuteman network, but I'll just elaborate just real quickly, and that is we're very convenient to everybody, which means we have access to a huge quantity of material without all of us having to buy the same stuff. And therefore, I would say it's probably one of the most successes in terms of something that was implemented. And it means you don't have everything here, and you don't have to.
The key thing, I mentioned the consortium, and I use this library extensively, and almost all the books I read come from other libraries. That's a great strength, and also it means that you have much more efficient use of the space here. The best aspect of this library, we mentioned the staff and others, is this grand old building, which is certainly one of the most revered buildings in Wayland. And I would hope that it continues to be a library, focusing on library functions, and need here, a community center and so forth, would be built elsewhere if they're funded by the town meeting.
I feel our strengths are our dedicated staff and our board of trustees that work tirelessly to give us an excellent library.
I agree. The staff I find absolutely amazing.
I would say the building is astoundingly beautiful. We have dancing cherubs upstairs. It's certainly amazing. Red roof tiles. I would love to see this building preserved and kept vibrant as our library.
I have to echo that previous speaker's opinion. I feel that it's probably the finest piece of architecture in this town, and for anyone to consider tearing it down would be a travesty. And I think there are historic preservationists around in this room right now who would probably agree with me. I think that it is so beautiful. It is iconic of the town. It really is. It's on our phone books and it's on our website, and I think that that's probably its strongest point. And I understand that an old building like this has problems. I understand that the problem with the elevator size and the age of the elevator and the fact that the stairs are not code compliant. There are many, many issues. I've read the report, the DRA report. But I think the biggest problem with the library is that there is a deed restriction on it, and I haven't heard whether that's been resolved. But my understanding is that the building must remain a library unless they find some legal way out of it. And apparently the trustees have tried 3 times to do that, and the courts have turned it down. Now that's just hearsay, so I don't have personal knowledge of the facts. So what I would hope, and what I'm saying about this is that whatever the solution may be, I sincerely hope that the trustees do not just abandon the building and leave it pickled up like Weston did, where it sat empty for more than 20 years.
Thank you very much. So what strengths do you see in the library today? We're talking about the present, we'll be talking about opportunities, and what we'd like to see in the future.
My strength, I agree. I adore the building. The staff is outstanding, and the Minuteman network, as my husband uses it extensively. He's a librarian and he couldn't be here. But since we're just talking about the library now, that's it.
I think the staff has been amazing. I think I'm in my third or fourth of people who've run the library. I think the trustees deserve a gigantic round of applause because I know they do a lot of work, and that's true for the current trustees as well as some of the past ones that I've been privileged to know. The Minuteman Network is a fantastic asset. I use it constantly. The library staff itself has been totally responsive. to new book requests, to ideas and suggestions over the year. I think if I died tomorrow, it would be hopefully with a library book in my hand. But I mean, I would be very happy, speaking personally, if the library just continued on the way it's gone. In my experience with it, I can't be happier. I do have some ideas for changing it or maybe improving it a little bit more, but I'm just thrilled with it. And I want to again say thank you to the staff and to the trustees for all the work that they've done and are continuing to do.
I like reading too, but I'd like to go a better way than reading a book. I'm sorry. Sorry, no offense. As far as the strengths, I think it's the staff, the building itself, and its architecture, and I'd have to say the network as well. I've used it many times. I've been here many times. I grew up in the city of Philadelphia using their library my entire life, so I felt right at home after I moved to Wayland in 1980 as well. So that's it.
I'm sorry. Got it.
What do you think the strengths of the library are?
I think strengths are definitely the staff. I think everybody is very helpful always when I come in, and also the Minuteman Network.
It's redundant to say the staff and the Minuteman Network are great, but they are. I also think it's important to consider this library as centrally located in what is the town center. And we need to remember that it was, the location was central to both Cochituate and North Wayland. And so let's not talk about moving it or dividing it.
I have a couple of suggestions if that's...
We're talking about strengths now. We'll get to suggestions after everybody has a chance to mention the strength. Thank you.
No, I think what everybody else has said, the staff, the building is beautiful, and the network of getting resources from other places. It's what everyone else has said. I agree.
I also agree with the staff and the network, specifically some of the digital resources that are available everywhere because of some of the limitations of the space have already been spoken about.
Yeah. One thing I really appreciate is the forward-looking projects we have that are new, like the Library of Things. I like the fact that we're expanding our borrowed resources, whether it be online opportunities or actual physical things that we can all share as a town and take advantage of the library's system that's all set up to allow people to borrow and lend things. I think that's fascinating.
I think that the resources that we have are terrific, and also the location of the library in the center of Wayland. We have walking paths and or bicycle paths that go from Natick all the way to Lincoln. It's a continuous walkway that people don't pay attention to. And then on the east-west, it's almost continuous, starting at the western border, going to Sudbury. So this is a central location, and I think that people should be able to get here any way that they can.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. I agree on location as well. It really is. Having it in the town center, I think, is a really nice aspect.
I just agree with everything that's been said. The building, the beautiful building we have, the location of the building, certainly the staff. I use it fairly regularly. I would also say the speaker programs that they have. I enjoy those, and the setting, I think, is very intimate and enjoyable setting. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
The only thing that I would add is just expand a little bit on the beautiful building. It's so comforting to sit here. and just to be in the rotunda part with the comfortable sofas, and even if you aren't going to read your book, there's lots to look at, looking around. And the other thing that is probably by chance, but in the past, the director of the library has been, well, I guess for the last 4 anyway, have been Wayland residents. And so it just means so much more of a sense of community in a fashion. I don't know why. I can't really put my finger on it, but I think there is a true sense of community here.
Thank you.
Of course, I appreciate the staff and all the things, the Minuteman. The thing that I find the most wonderful about the library is actually going to make you laugh. I love the convenience of being able to get books from the convenience of my home. So is that overdrive? Is that what I want to say? I don't know that many people know how fabulous this is. And I'm going to tell you, I've had a Kindle for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years. I've paid for 1 book in that time. And I read all the bestsellers, and I love it. And I also subscribe to the WOW that comes out that I know comes from the library. And I think this is just wonderful service. So I do like the building, to come in and smell it. But I love getting the books. No, I checked out 2 today. Today I checked out 2 for my heart.
Thank you. What strengths do you see in the
Can't say enough. The resources and the trustees are just incredible. I mean, they do amazing things for what they have. I love this location. I love this building. I love exactly what someone else said. I love sitting in here. It's almost like sitting in your living room. But one of the things that I really appreciate is, and this goes to accessibility, is the timeliness of getting books. I love holding on to books, and I love to be able to order those online, come so quickly. And I read pretty quickly, so I just love how quick and how accessible they can get stuff to me.
So ditto for everything that's on the list. And also, I've loved the programs. I mean, 1 week I was here 4 nights for different programs, and so I really love those.
I appreciate the staff and the excellent work they do despite very crowded working conditions. I also appreciate the introduction to technology and the programs that promote lifelong learning. They're excellent.
I appreciate all the comments about the staff because I hired a lot of them. And they are wonderful. I also really have to shout out to all the fabulous programming that is being done now, and I hope I had something to do with starting it, but it's really wonderful, and I strongly believe that is a very important part of the library, and the library is a community center and lifelong learning, but people really do, and the children's programming, which there aren't many parents of small children here, but the children's librarians do a wonderful job. What you don't really understand is how extremely difficult it is to run the number of programs we run here in this space, sharing this space, one space, no dedicated children's space. It is a problem. So, but really, I think this, obviously, I think the staff's wonderful and the programming is great too.
I think the directors are fantastic.
I hate to repeat it, but the staff is great. Really appreciate the staff. The programs are outstanding. The one thing is that for some reason, not enough people know about these programs. For instance, we've got some great stuff coming up. I was involved with the Great Presenters program. We've got a guy coming that knows Sudbury River and farming in the past and what it's going to be in the future as one of the speakers. We've got the producer of Nova coming
to give a program. People don't know that he lives in Wayland. We've got all kinds of great people in Wayland that we take advantage, or should be taking advantage of. But I think that one of the problems tonight is that I and most of the people here are kind of older. And I think for the future of the library, you've got to get to younger people what they are going to want in a library. I mean, I've changed. I don't go to the shelves anymore to look for a volume. I just go online. I tell you guys what I'd like, and a few days to a week later, it's here. Or I go, and I download the book, as an audio. And I don't listen to music anymore when I go anyplace. I listen to books. I've done that for years.
So we'll save that thought about the feelings of
Okay.
younger people for part 3.
Okay.
Which is next. Thank you. Sir.
I think the library is Wayland appropriate.
And how was that? How was that? Yeah.
Well, for basically all the reasons that people have stated tonight, fits in.
Thank you.
I have to voice a problem. I grew up in Wayland, and if the trustees had taken the library fines that I put in, they could buy 3 new libraries. So.
Thank you.
So I would like to, of course, reiterate the staff. I think the flexibility of the staff is really exceptional. I think the way that some of the space is configured to meet the needs of different displays and themes that are happening, I think is really exciting. I think that comes too from the empowerment of the staff. From what I can see, is that they can, I feel like the staff seems empowered to kind of follow something that they're passionate about, at least from an outside perspective. I think I would also like to draw attention to the 2 art exhibit spaces, this room and the foyer space upstairs. I think the variety of work is really exciting to see from month to month.
Thank you. We need to go here. Good.
All of the above, and I would also like to add that there's a large print book section, which my mother would not be able to get by without. So she gets in and gets back and uses those. I'm a big user of the Minutemen Library. But I also wanted to say one of the strengths is the librarians are actually looking out for us in the sense of I've pestered them about cybersecurity and things along those lines just for taking care of our privacy or our identity theft type thing. And I think that's forward looking, and I'm not sure we'd get that anywhere else.
Sorry that you're last.
No, that's fine. I have really nothing new to add, but I would like to reiterate the staff and the programming is great, especially speaking from a mom with young kids. I'm on the board of the Wayland Children Parents Association. We host activities here. Everyone is very accommodating. Even when we've had last-minute scheduling conflicts with the town building, they've welcomed us here on a, hour's notice. They've been great, especially considering the cramped quarters here. It boggles my mind what they're able to put on for us. So,
Thank you. We're going to open it up again to 1-sentence editions of new things, and I just hand out what.
The library started offering a service called Canopy, which is like Netflix or Prime, except instead of rock'em sock'em robots and a bunch of junk, this is curated good stuff and editions of the great courses and a lot of the great material. If you haven't signed up for Canopy, sign up for it.
Thank you.
I guess I just wanted to add, I think people sort of look at the library as being, they look at the library as being the heart of Wayland. And so every time anybody tries to make any changes to it, there's a huge hue and cry because nobody really wants any damage to what they see as being the heart and the center of the town.
So the strength that we're going to write down is the heart of the community. Okay. Did I get it wrong? Another last minute addition, one sentence additions. Who wants to have the last word? How about you? You in the back. You haven't said anything. All right. Now, what you all came for. What is your vision for the library for 5 years from now? What opportunities does the library have to do things differently, faster, better, smoother, slower, more carefully? How can the library change to meet your vision for the library for 5 years? And this woman has got her hand up first, so we'll let her go first.
Thank you. I have a list. I'm just going to read it real quick, and I'm sure a lot of people have the same ideas. The DPW actually has 2 huge pumps that the town spent $800,000 to acquire, and it can be deployed here within minutes, I'm told. It's a pump so that we don't flood again here. However, there are additional mitigations that can be done to reduce the risk of flooding, and I would like us to investigate and invest in those things. Some of that could also include raising the library by 6 to 8 feet from its foundation. Sounds like a hard thing to do, but it can be done. It's been done in other places. We have a septic system here that is very old now. I don't know if it's 30 years or 40 years old, but it's quite old. And in 2015, the town approved $56,000 to connect the septic system of the library to the town wastewater treatment system. I would like that to proceed so we don't have a septic problem here. Once that septic is resolved, we could look to adding space to the library on top of the vacated septic area or somewhere else, but it needs to be small and appropriate to the size of the library we have. I know Mike mentioned the freight house. That too is very close. We should look into using the freight house more. And last but not least, we also have parking space issues that may be resolved if we utilize the space behind the freight house. And what we need to do then is remove macadam so that we don't run into issues of endangering our environment. Thank you. And I'll give you this.
What's your vision for the library? What would you like to see in 5 years?
I'd like to have a library that's truly accessible, physically accessible. Our building right now is very mentally accessible to all people who have any kind of physical disability. So that for me is very critical. I came from a community that has an amazing library building that they invested in, and I've seen the changes in that community from people utilizing the space, children coming in after school for tutoring, and for community activities, people coming in to use the computers on a regular basis that were from the lower income brackets who were able to utilize the library throughout the day with guidance from the library staff. And so I really would like to see our library tap into some of those resources. I think having the Minuteman facilities is great, but if you're someone who doesn't readily access that type of technology, I think it's very limiting not having books on hand that people can look at.
I would like to see the library spruced up, for lack of a better word, and we've done that over many years from time to time. that wouldn't be terribly expensive, and then a modest space increase. The idea of raising this building 8 feet is new to me anyway. That's one possible thing to do, and also build a slight expansion that would provide a larger children's library, perhaps something like this, and things that are fairly modest in cost that would improve this library.
I'd reiterate the idea of the library trustees spending a very modest amount of money saying what can you actually do here. That would include involving the various boards to find out about variances that we may have to ask for, as well as abutters to see if there's some way they can accommodate us, perhaps giving us some more land. And probably the new thing I would suggest is in an environment where we do have the Minuteman Network, I'm just wondering whether Wayland, as opposed to having space, could say we have talent, which is our staff, and just saying we're specialized in something that nobody else specializes in as a library, that gives us our own sort of sense that we're worth just as much as everybody else, even if we're not as big. That's it.
Again, I'd like to echo some prior speakers' sentiments that we do have some long-term plans on the books that are kind of being ignored, and have to believe they include plans for the library and other capital facilities in town. So we should probably pay attention to that. As a transplant to New England, I kind of became the true sort of frugal Yankee, where I used to pick up things at the dump and fix them up for my own use. So I'd like us to keep what we have and take care of it along the lines of what some prior speakers have said. So thanks.
I've got a lot of things I'd like to see, and most of them I think don't cost anything or cost very little. First of all, I'd like to see the library work more closely with the public schools, which everyone was talking about from the standpoint of taxes. I want to exploit the public schools, and these are the ways I want to exploit them. First of all, I want the library to work with the school committee and the superintendent to get the state-of-the-art high school library open at evenings, weekends, and perhaps during the summer months when school is not in session. I think much could be done with that, and that also goes for any of the other school libraries that are available or could be available. I'd like to see the library also exploit the school population, and when I say exploit, I mean it. Have the high school kids, many of whom are much brighter than any of us in this room, give lectures, give presentations, engage in debates, engage in symposia, get involved with library planning. I'm not talking about the high school library now, I'm talking about the Wayland Public School, the Wayland Public Library. I'd like to see committees made up of high school students and maybe some middle school students get involved with the library. It's a little disappointing tonight, and this again is no reflection on the staff or the library, that we have a bunch of old gassers here for the most part tonight. Excuse the language. Where are the kids? Why aren't the kids more involved in the library? Well, part of the answer is they do have a state-of-the-art library themselves, but I'd like to see them more involved here by giving presentations. They can also assist with the technology. Most of those kids know more about the technological stuff than any of us, and I would venture a good portion of the library staff too, and that's taking nothing away from the staff. Why can't we get high school kids at night to help out with technology? Can we get the high school kids involved with the web page? Can we get the high school kids involved with the newsletter? How about a publication in conjunction with the library involving high school students? For that matter, how about a publication involving the community as a whole. Let's see, what else do I have here? I would like to have the high school kids involved with WACAM more. And in conjunction with that, I would like to have WACAM more involved with the library. I think every presentation that's worthy of note, every lecture, everything that goes on in the library at night that's worthy of being presented is worthy of being served. And I think with the technology now, everything can be recorded and preserved, sent up to the cloud, and easily indexed for community use. And I'm not talking just about community use now. I'm talking about long into the future. At one point, we had a gentleman in Wayland named Archibald Cox. Wouldn't it have been great if we had a life history preserved in the form of a videotaped interview that was made of him? I'm sorry.
We got to give everybody a chance.
I'm sorry.
We got to give everybody
Sorry.
a chance.
Go ahead.
No, I'm going to pass.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring the focus back to just one comment. Being an architect, I tend to focus on the architectural issues. Several years ago, a report was done of it's called the DRA report of several facilities in town, and the company that did this design study did proposals of layouts of alternative uses of this building, which involved complete gutting of the interior of the building. And I would say a lot of people are suggesting we preserve the building, and I am a proponent of that, but I also want to put the caveat that you don't just preserve the structure, that you actually preserve the historic exterior of the original building, the beautiful barrel tile or terracotta tile roofing, and both the exterior and the interior rotunda that was alluded to earlier, that become a focus of preservation as part of the reuse of the building.
So I'm actually impressed by the suggestions of tying the high school kids closer to the library, something I hadn't thought of. So my only comment is, this is my iPad. Every book I've read in the last probably 8 years has been on this thing, and I believe this is the future. And I think I know that you can borrow books and things like that on the on readable devices and things, but that's really what I think. I mean, in 5 years, will people actually be reading books? And so I think, I want to be careful, and I can see people grumping, and you're right. There are people who much prefer books, and if you told me this a few years ago that I would only read off my iPad, I would have laughed at you. And I do think you need to have books and preserve books for people who really want them, but that number of people is going to dwindle more and more as time goes on. And so emphasizing electronics and using things electronically, I think, is where the future is for any library. So that's it.
Oh, I'll take the iPad. I have a couple of suggestions. One is space utilization in the library. For instance, you could think about having movable wall here so that the children's space could expand when needed and the lecture hall could expand when needed. I think that would go a long way. But on the services, I'd like to see somebody think about possible delivery of books to people that can't get to the library. And the other thing is, I think that the wealth, they do? Yes. Who knew? Well, no, but that goes to my next point, which is there's a wealth of information online through the library where you don't have to have your own subscription and stuff. And I think more information could be transmitted about what's available through the library online. It's really an underused, underknown resource, I think. Thank you.
I would add to the comment from the gentleman in front of me. Coordinating with the schools makes sense from the standpoint also of using their space for larger gatherings that you don't have room for in this room. And we should be able to use those spaces. The auditorium and even some of the classrooms are bigger. So we should be making better use of all the town's resources, sharing them.
I like the library just the way it is. I use books and take out an occasional movie, and I use the Minuteman Network, and I'm quite satisfied now.
I find that a lot of the people I know, especially young parents, go to other towns, rather they go to Sudbury or Natick, because our facilities are so limited, even though we have great programs and the staff is very creative. And especially a lot of the things that we are going to need a library for in 5 years, for example, with all the people who work at home, a trend that's increasing, those people need meeting spaces. And this is, our community needs places to come together. This is the only room. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to reserve this room. It's already been booked. We have one room. And I think it sounds good to use schools and other things like that, but as a matter of practicality, there are security issues there. But also, I don't know if you guys have been to an adequate library recently in terms of space. But when you go to these new libraries, the last one I saw, it was overflowing with teens. And the reason we don't get too many high school students in this library is because we don't have any space for them. We're trying to work for it right now. But if you have a big teen room, they come. They have spaces to do their projects together. They come to study in the evenings. These libraries that I've seen are filled with people, with grandparents, grandchildren, and the spaces for everybody and the resources are for everybody there. People who work have enough space where they can come for the day, or if they want to go into the quiet section, they can go into the quiet section. The days of library is quiet all the time is absolutely over. It's supposed to be a community space, a place of intellectual cross-pollination. I think that's where I see the future of a library being, as a vibrant intellectual center. And if we don't have the space to do that, it's very difficult. I love this building, but I also see that it's incredibly cramped. And with all the creativity and the wonderful staff we have and the people who would love to be able to come to the library if it had adequate spaces for them, I would love if we could find some solution where we had adequate space to the creativity and the programming that we could have, because we have a huge potential that's it's having a hard time being met right now.
I was really struck by, as we were all going around, the strengths, that the staff was on most people's list. And I think that I'd be curious, as one of the other participants mentioned, what they could accomplish if they were given the space and resources to do so. I'd be curious about what they think would be helpful for the vision. I'm sure they've been asked, but I think that's an important thing to listen to, what they think that they need to be successful, and continue giving us the community and the resources that we have. I wasn't able to park in this parking lot today as I was trying to come here, and that was frustrating and almost turned me away. But I do think that space and parking and accessibility is important for all people and all ages, and so that would be a highlight for me.
Thank you very much. What would you like to see in 5 years?
I would like to see improvements in the children's space down here. I would like it not to be in a damp and dark basement. I would like it to be a space where my son really wants to come. When I mention the library, he thinks we're going to Sudbury to play with the trains in front of all their windows and see the fish tank. So I think there's a lot to be done in the children's room. It's simply so small. The stacks are so close together. The stacks are very high for young children, and there's really no space for them to to run around and play and listen to stories and everything everyone else said.
I'm quite satisfied. It serves me very well. Thank you.
I think we have a great lending library, and I would really like to ask the trustees and the other people involved to check out fully the use of the other facilities, such as the schools that the town already has. And yeah, there are always problems, one thing or another, but it's wonderful to hear all the suggestions that have come through here tonight. There have been a lot of excellent ones. But maybe we have the game of Trivial Pursuit not done in the library, but there might be another one of our town facilities that would be able to have programs like that. And even the children's programs in some of the other libraries. Just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'll just mention some things that I mentioned 5 years ago that we did this. And relative particularly to parking and enlargement of this space, all of the historical groups, Historic District Commission, Historical Commission, Wayland Historical Society, got together about 5 years ago or whatever it was, and talked about the possibility of moving the freight shed forward to the road and then consolidating the parking so the parking wasn't on each side of the freight shed, and looking into building a very simple two-story parking structure in that area that would in fact increase the parking. And the other thing that I understand this is that the 1983 edition cannot support a second story. So one possibility is to take down the 1983 edition and rebuild it enlarged and with a second story. So that's just some of the things, and I certainly hope that, I mean, I do agree. I love the library. I don't want it to change dramatically in terms of its exterior architecture and interior. But of course we need more parking. That's always the case. And even if we want to have a walking community, we still need more parking. And I think that that would be one thing that we should pursue and really look into. Carol?
In the prior question, which was the present library strengths, just about everybody mentioned the staff, and yet nobody has mentioned the cramped quarters that the staff functions in. Their office space is just beyond less than inadequate. So in my vision, 5 years for the library would have adequate office space for the staff.
Like I said earlier, I really would like to see a library that competes with all the other libraries in the area, and that Wayland is just as good as all of them, so that we don't feel like we have to go to other libraries, that we have a great library in our community. And whether that be renovating this building to meet those needs, or whether it means building a new building. But I think before we do that, we need to look at what we want the library to really do, and that's one of the things we're hoping we're doing today. But one of the things we really need to do is look at the various activities that we do around the community. You know, we do exercise within the schools, within our recreation department. We do some exercise within the library facility. You know, we do many programs across Council of Aging, the schools, the library. And I think we can maybe consolidate those and maybe look at them a little bit differently. But before we look at, what facilities we need to look at the program offer as well. So.
Really, everyone's already expressed pretty much my hopes for the library, but I really also strongly want to emphasize that I think it's very important with all these people working from home and telecommuting that we have adequate space for people to come to the library and work. They're community members and they deserve to use the library. It's a new way that people are using the library, though, but we just absolutely have no place like that. And for small meetings, too, it's really sad. And every library that builds those spaces finds that they're oversubscribed all the time. And that's something we really need here. And also just, my hope is that there's some adequate, appropriate space for programming in the future for both adults and children. Improved spaces for children is really critical.
Hear, hear.
I think it's critical to keep all of the programs concentrated in the library. And I understand the need for having to have extra space. And yeah, there are other extra spaces that could be utilized in town. But I think you have to keep that centered in one place. And I would hope it would be here. Problem is, and I'm on the Conservation Commission, so I know it's impossible to expand on this site. Even if we threw out the Wayland regulations, there's no way under the state regulations that an expansion could happen here, which you have to realize that we're sitting in a swamp, essentially. This was filled originally to build this building. And all you have to do is look on the other side of the parking lot to see what it used to be right where this building is. The thing that we could do, though, and the property has come up on the market and nobody has pursued it, is the property immediately to the north of us. If the town could acquire that, divide it, sell the house to get money back on the purchase, it would leave that higher land behind the library to the north available for expansion. It's the only way I can see that there could be an expansion on this property. And I think it's come on the market a couple of times and then been taken off, and everybody just ignores it. And it always bewilders me why no one sees the potential there for the library. I think we've screwed up royally in the past with that. So that's my remarks there. And I think everything is going to go digital. I collect rare books, and I have this thing about books, but still virtually everything I do anymore is electronic. And, I still read at night when I go to bed. So I'm always getting books from the library for that purpose. But everything else is electronic. And I think that's why it's important to talk to younger people. We're all too old to advise you what the library should be in the future. You got to talk to the younger people to figure out where the library should be going in the future. And that's it.
So I guess I would say I think we can think ahead for the younger people. And in 5 years, I'd like to see the library have no paper books, no periodicals in paper, no paper at all, that anyone who uses the library resources be using them in a digital fashion. And I think that I'm concerned that we're damaging our use potential by even offering an opportunity to look at it in paper.
I think at some point early on, it would be wise to put these things in a good, better, best ranking. The ones that require extensive capital improvements be very low on the list, and
I think, what we're doing today is we're gathering ideas from the community. And thank you all for coming and contributing. Sorry about that. What we're doing today is gathering ideas from you, the community members who were generous enough to come and spend your evening with us. We're not making a decision tonight about anything. This is all going to go to the planning group and to the Board of Trustees to digest and evaluate. So thank you. We have a few more people and we have 5 more minutes. So.
Thanks. I think I would hope that we continue to be cognizant of the different purposes of the library, and I'm hearing a lot of talk about the schools. I think I just want to advocate for our school librarians that they're doing a lot of work to advocate for partnering with the library. We have a teen advisory group that at the middle school that comes over, a lot of cross-programming there. And I just like speaking to the time and effort that goes into curating a collection for the middle school and the high school, and how that is not the same as like a general lending library. So kind of tapping the brakes on the conversation of just opening up that collection and the extra work that would entail. I was really struck by the idea of like the collaboration spaces and kind of exploring that idea of maybe partnering with spaces in the area where kind of that active collaboration and productivity could happen. I feel like there's not a lot of space in this building, so not leaving the space, but maybe finding optional spaces for activities like the collaboration that we see in some of the other libraries around.
Thank you very much.
Well, as a mom with young kids, when I come to the library, I spend the bulk of my time down here in the basement. And so I appreciate the historical significance of the building, and I do agree the rotunda is very beautiful, but the space down here in the basement, it just isn't very functional nor beautiful for, all the young families with the kids and everything. So I would like to see that improved, and I would like to see a state-of-the-art library. I could not agree more. I work for spaces for working parents. I work full-time. I work mostly from home. It would be great to have space to accommodate that. A lot of this has been said already, but.
Thank you very much. One more round, then you.
A lot of this is said already, but I want to echo a few of these things. So my vision would be include improved accessibility. That includes getting to the library, being able to park here. Many times come and left because there's nowhere to park. Getting into the library and moving throughout the library is difficult for a variety of people based on their accessibility needs, and that applies across ages. Again, the work from home aspect, having flexible workspaces. Working from home can encompass a lot of different things. It can encompass working by yourself quietly, can also include taking a phone call. It might be moving between those things and ability to have different spaces available in order to do that, including having small meetings, especially with your colleagues who live in and around, so that you can have that FaceTime, which is still critically important even in the digital age. Adequate space for children and children's programming that is a little brighter and not so dreary and smelly often because of where it is. And to an earlier comment, I do live in the digital world. I use a lot of digital resources. I read both on my Kindle, but I still love to read a book. And my 3 children, who are ages from 5 to 14, all still love to read books. And as a parent, I don't want them on their devices all the time. And there's nothing as special as an illustrated book for a child. So that's just never, for me, never going to be a digital resource. That's always going to be in paper. And I still want that to be available for them.
I want to say that I worked in the Cochituate branch of the Wayland Library. It did exist, I think it should exist again if we don't get another library. But all the suggestions I hear take up space, lots of space, lots and lots of spaces. I've worked in 7 different towns, and all the really positive, successful libraries have space. Love the building. I told you I was a page here, but it is inadequate for the staffing. Think how they would soar. I mean, you all think they're amazing now. Think what they could do if they had office space, if they had programming space, if they had teen space. All the things that have been suggested are wonderful suggestions. However, the town budget, what are you, 1% of the town budget, if that? 1.4%? I'd like to see an increase in the town budget for the library specifically. I would also like to see in the future that we bring home all the parents and adults who go to other libraries and use them. I would like to see Wayland Library as a destination library and pulling from Natick and Lincoln and Weston coming to our library, not the other way around. And finally, because I'm an historian also, I would like to see the local history collection built up here, because the library is open more hours than the Historical Society is, and you have more resources, or you have a lot of resources, let me put it that way, and it should be available to people who come after work or on weekends, which it is not available at the Historical Society unless you make a special appointment. So teens are very important, and children are very important, and they need that space.
Thank you. Last word, we're out of time.
Teens love their own space. The Freight House could be their own space. It is still close to the library. It is right here. The town is paying for it. We're not using it. Collins Market is ideal for small group meetings, tutoring, some forms of staff and record storage, and people who wish to work at home. It's on the market. It's part of our history. It's part of the library's history. I think we should acquire it.
Thank you. It's 9 o'clock. Ding, ding, ding. I really appreciate your coming out tonight and contributing all of this information to us, which will be typed up and shared with the library planning group and the Board of Trustees. Thank you very much.